Well, here we are for the month of July with the July Garden Calendar, and this month we're going to talk about several different things, look at several different aspects of the garden, what you can plant, side dressing, how to trellis, vertically trellis some plants in some of your raised bed gardens. We're also going to look at some chores, things you can do with some of your perennials and flowers in the landscape. And then July, being one of the hottest months of the year, we're going to look at water needs and how you can satisfy water needs in the landscape or in the garden. So stay with us, and I hope you enjoy the show. Well, there's a lot of different things you can do out in the garden in the month of July, and of course a lot of your vegetables are getting close to maturity, and you can go around and you can start harvesting some of your vegetables. Of course, there's weeds to be pulled, possibly tomato plants to be suckered, different things of that nature. But some other tasks in the garden for the month of July are things like look for disease problems. Tomatoes are always usually, quite often you'll see blight, early blight or late blight showing up in the garden. Some of the things you can use are daconil or some other chemical fungicide that has the chemical chlorothalonil in it, or one of your organic alternatives is serenade. So tomatoes, as the season grows on, especially if it gets to be a wet spell, can give you some disease issues. So some people spray that as a preventative, or just at the first sign start spraying. So that's something you may want to be doing in your garden. The blight usually starts at the bottom of your plant with little circular rings, turning brown and then black, and then starting to die from the bottom up. So that might be something you encounter in your garden. Other things you can do in the month of July in your garden are over here in this bed. The gardener has removed some of his spring crops. Some of the lettuce finally has gotten out of here, cabbage, whatever it may be. And if you pull those plants up, you have some space, and still in the month of July you can go back and plant several things. You can plant if first half of July you can plant green beans, and they'll still have time to produce. Also cucumbers, squash, some things of that nature that you can still get in before our frost in October. So get out there in early July and plant some of those things. And then towards the end of July, you can start putting in a few of your fall garden crops, a few things like carrots and Brussels sprouts. Towards the end of July, you need to go ahead and get them in the garden and get them started. But that's a few things you can do in the garden this month of July. Okay, another thing you can do in the month of July is side dress your vegetables. Quite often we put fertilizer out when we plant things in mid-April, and sometimes we don't get back to side dress or add any more nutrients. But as plants grow and they start producing fruit, produce, whether it's beans or corn or whatever, coming back and laying a little strip of whether it's something higher in nitrogen or just a 10-10-10 will give them a boost and help produce a lot more yield as far as things, especially beans and squash, corn, some of those that are later maturing but really need a nutrient boost as they're producing their fruit. Okay, as far as lawn care goes in the month of July, we should not be putting out any fertilizer. That should have been done in the past, and it's really too late right now. Only thing we really need to be doing is to be concerned about is keeping the correct mowing height, and 3 to 4 inches is the recommended mowing height, and preferably probably closer to the 4 inches. And that really keeps the fescue that most of us have shading out those weed seeds from germinating. And if you do have some major weed problems in the lawn, the only other thing you could possibly do in the month of July is spray a 3-way spray to control some of those broadleaf weeds. Okay, there are a lot of different flowers in bloom in the month of July. For example, the hardy Amaryllis behind me is a beautiful flower. A lot of different things. Trumpet creeper, butterfly weed, a lot of the daylilies, red hot poker, some of those are still in bloom. The Rose of Sharon's in bloom this month. Crepe myrtles, abelias, Shasta daisies, purple coneflower, bee balm, coreopsis, allium. Just a lot of different things are in bloom in the month of July. So get out there and enjoy all those flowers that are in bloom, and make you some beautiful table arrangements with some of those flowers out there in the landscape. Some of your perennials that tend to bloom once, you can actually deadhead or snip off some of the spent blooms and get a second flush of bloom on them as well. This is a moonbeam coreopsis. After several of them bloom and they're dead, just snip them off. It's not quite time to do that all over, but after a week or so, these will all be kind of past their bloom and they'll be deadhead. We can go through, snip all these flower heads off, and we'll get another flush of bloom in 2 to 4 weeks. So, little secret for some of your perennial flowers. Well, one of the plants that is in bloom in the month of July is the Rose of Sharon, and it was first mentioned in the King James Version in 1611 when it was produced in England. I believe it was mentioned in the book Song of Solomon. So, Rose of Sharon, a very beautiful plant in the month of July. Okay, in the month of July, there's several things that possibly may need some spraying or some spray attention. For example, we have the Japanese beetles that tend to be on a lot of different things right now. When they're on vegetables or fruits such as these grapes, usually most people will use the 7, which is a very low on the toxicity scale as far as sprays go, and basically it breaks down in just a matter of days. So Japanese beetles, 7's a very safe spray to use for Japanese beetle on food crops. Now, if you have Japanese beetle on some of your ornamental plants or flowers, you can use something stronger such as orthene, or even one of the systemics like merit, something with the chemical imidacloprid in. Now, the orthene and the imidacloprid would be something that you could use for ornamentals for Japanese beetle control. Some other things you might need to spray in the month of July would be if you have fruit trees or grapes, you may continue your spray program with the all-purpose fruit tree spray that may have Captan and some type of an insecticide as well. Keep that up. If you have roses, you maybe have a rose spray program for aphids and black spot. Continue that. Just monitor your plants. If you have bagworms or other insect pests, you may need to spray, but just continue to monitor your landscape and your vegetables and fruit trees and things like that. If you have a problem, a disease, insect, whatever, you may need to spray. So that's it for sprays as far as the month of July. Well, one thing in the month of July that's always a concern for most gardeners is the adequate amount of water for your landscape, garden, lawn, whatever it may be, trees, shrubs. Most trees, shrubs, vegetable gardens all need at least an inch of rain or an inch of water per week. So, a rain gauge is a great tool to use if measuring rainfall to see if you've got that inch, or if you have overhead irrigation or sprinklers. You don't really know if you're getting that inch of rainfall unless there's a way you capture it. So a rain gauge, just put it out if you've got overhead irrigation and see if you're getting that inch of watering per week. Another way is in landscapes or gardens, you can use soaker hoses. They do a great job at putting out water, and one advantage of those is they don't put out overhead water that may sit on your shrub leaves or your vegetable leaves overnight and foster or cause diseases. Another great way to do things, especially if you've got a raised bed garden or maybe even in a traditional row garden, is to use drip irrigation. And that's what we have going here. And if you can see water dripping out of each of these little lines here, this is drip irrigation. Everything you see here in this raised bed costs less than $10. So drip irrigation is not very expensive. We will go back over and look at the end of the water hose where it comes out of the house. You have to put a pressure reducer. The pressure reducer is around $9. So you can buy the pressure reducer and what you have here in this raised bed total $20. But if you use the same hose, you can do multiple beds. What you see here is like I say, $10 in this 8-foot bed. And I'll just show you the components real quick. The water hose is attached to a main line. Here we have about 4 foot of main line, and you just attach that with an adapter. It's a main line water hose adapter. About $1 was what that piece is valued at. Then you run your main line, and then you punch holes in your main line with a punch, the main line punch. Just punch your hole in there, and then you get to these little barb connectors. You just push it in the hole, and it'll snap in the little hole that you punched. Then you slip the end of the drip line right over the other end of the barb connector. It's very easy to do. You stretch out your drip line. They have they're dripping. They have holes spaced every 9 inches. You can get them spaced every 12 inches, whatever spacing you want to get. Cut that off 8 foot like I did in these 8-foot beds. And then at the end of the drip line, you put a little goof plug. It's just basically a solid fitting. You plug it in the end of it. That seals it up. At the end of the main line, where it was a main line, we just cut it off, slipped one end over the adapter, another end we just folded back and put a figure 8 connector or coupling over it just to pinch it shut. So it's very easy. You can stretch this stuff out. I rolled out my tubing in the sunlight, get it flexible. In less than 30 minutes, you've got everything set up, and you can leave it here all year long. When it gets dry, if you're not getting adequate rainfall, come screw your water hose into the fitting and just let it run for 45 minutes to an hour. And they do have a gallon per minute per drip tube, so you can figure out how many inches of water you are getting. I think it takes me 45 minutes to an hour to get more than an inch of watering in my bed. And when it's a dry week, I just come plug it up for an hour and then time it, turn it off. And it looks dry on the surface, but you push your hand down in there and it's all mushy and it's really watered completely underneath, and that's what we're shooting for. And it's not wetting my leaves to cause any disease problems. So drip irrigation, a great inexpensive way to set up your gardens. And also we've done a watermelon patch on black plastic and run drip tube on this year, and that's done a great job with the melon patch too as well. Now we'll show you the pressure reducer at the spigot. Well, a couple other components of the irrigation. I just want to show you the main line tubing comes in a roll of 50 foot, and it's about $6 for that roll, which will do many raised beds. And then your drip tubing with the already perforated holes every 9 inches comes in a roll of 100 foot, and it's about a little less than $10 for 100 foot of this. So it's very inexpensive. Other components you can see here on the end of the water hose. This is a pressure reducer, and that's one of the more expensive pieces of the system, and it's, I believe, $9 and something. But that reduces it to, I believe, 30 pounds per square inch, which drops the pressure down, which works well for this drip system. Now, I do have a water filter. I have well water here at the house, but I do have a filtering system on it, so I don't really have to filter the water. But if you're using well water, you could, and you don't have a filtering system, you could get little granules of sand and dirt, which could stop up your emitters. And if you need a filtering system, you can buy an inline filter to put right here, and I believe that's $12. So if you don't have a filter and you have well water, you may need to purchase a small inline filter as well. But all in all, drip irrigation is very inexpensive for your garden, your landscape, whatever you might want to use it on. So that's something to look at for meeting your watering needs in the hot months of the summer. Okay, one thing you can do in the month of July is, if you can kind of snip back some of the old blooms to promote some additional blooming later in the summer, like the daylilies here, you can snip back these spent flower stalks, and if you do that all around your daylilies that will typically give them another little boost of energy, so they're not putting the energy into the seed pods, which I've already broken some of these off here. But snip back your flower stalks, and that'll with a good rainfall or some watering, that'll give it an extra little boost, and you'll get another flush of blooms later this summer. Another thing you can do with daylilies is actually you can divide daylilies in the month of July. So you can just dig them up all around, and then divide them up, share them with a neighbor, or put some more plantings in another place around your house. So when they get real big like this, they do need dividing. So another chore you can do in the month of July. Okay, another thing you can do in the month of July is control some of your vining weeds that are a nuisance. And one of these right here, poison ivy, we've got growing up here. July is a great month to treat that. Poison ivy, honeysuckle, kudzu, any of those hard to control weeds. They're usually blooming in the month of July, so herbicides such as glyphosate, which is in Roundup, usually works best in the month of July when they're in the process of blooming. So get out there and try to treat some of your hard to control vines. And also, if you really want to get in there and work at it hard, you can make a cut on your vine and spray that fresh cut, and a lot of times that'll even get a little better control. So get out there and try to treat those vines this month. Another thing you might take advantage of in the month of July is blackberries. Also, blueberries are coming ripe too, but a lot of blackberries out there just for the picking. So smoothies, cobblers, whatever you might use them in. But there's a lot of them out there, so get out there and get picking. Well, here we are still in the hot month of July, and we're here with Brian Heath today, and he's got a really neat garden, and I'm just going to let Brian show you what he's got planted here and some neat things he's got going on in his garden. So real impressed. We'd like to see new gardens on our calendar, so here's another neat one. So Brian, I'm just going to turn it over to you and get out of your way and let you kind of share what you got planted here.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of different stuff here, and it's a family garden. My 3 kids help out. My wife does a lot of the work too, so we all work together on it. And got a little lettuce patch right here. This is Sarah's lettuce patch, and it's a little bit hot for lettuce, but we're still trying to make it work. It's a salad bowl variety, so it's supposed to tolerate heat a little bit better. So get a couple more weeks worth of lettuce out of it than you do off of a standard cool season weather. And trying a little experiment back here with the raised bed with the lettuce as well. I've had some got a hold of some shade cloth from an old greenhouse that they weren't using, and just put some hoops up in the bed and put the shade cloth over top of it, and hopefully that'll maybe get a couple of weeks or maybe an extra month worth of growing time off of the lettuce over there. We'll just kind of see how it works out this year, but we like to have as much fresh lettuce as we can and save us from going to the supermarket. So we've got some Swiss chard that does pretty good in the summertime. The collards and stuff are more cool season, so it's lasted last year we planted it and lasted all the way through the summer, so we're hoping to do the same this year, and haven't had much problem with pests with it, so it's been fairly easy to maintain. Just planting it, sometimes it doesn't get established real well for whatever reason, but we have to go back and replant or fill in some spots, but it does pretty good once we get it growing.
What's above your Swiss chard here on these few rows here?
We've got some bush beans growing right there, so we've got some bush beans coming in. Try to plant stuff at different times, so that way we can have stuff coming in throughout the season and not just have it all come in at one time. So we've got some different age beans out there, so and then we'll do a little bit of canning in the summertime too as well. All right, we got some half runners here. This is the first year we tried half runners, so just want to give it a try. So we got some poles and twine, getting them up and down. We just picked and ate some here just last week, so that was our first crop of beans we got off of these. So it's a lot easier picking up there, and they have pretty good flavors. So we might do a little bit more with that next year. We'll see how that goes. And then we've got some squash here. Again, this is the kids' garden. We gave them one section of the garden where they can do their own little 4-H gardens and work on that. So this is some of the squash that's doing real well here in this new garden. And I think one of the reasons it's doing well because it is new, because our squash in the other part's been hammered pretty hard by squash bugs and borers and things, so we haven't had as good a luck down there, but these plants seem to be doing real well. And these are some of the kids' bush beans here. So they're getting close to producing. So they'll, about the time these stop producing, hopefully these will have plenty of beans on them. So we'll just keep bean flow going through the house as good as we can. And we've got some mostly bell peppers planted back here. I've got some different varieties, and I'm not sure which ones they are. Different colored ones, reds and greens and chocolate, I think, are mixed in here. So we've got several pepper plants growing and a few small peppers getting started on them. So they're doing all right. And then I've got a little trellis set up here for growing tomatoes. This is a trick one of my friends showed me, and it's real. Once you do it, of course, like everything else, once you do it, it's easy, but or simple. You understand it. But I've just kind of set it up where you plant the tomato plants about a foot apart, and then you put the stakes, the main post, about 5 to 6 feet apart. And I just took the there's a little plate that comes with them that helps them stick in the ground. Just popped that little plate off, and they already had a hole drilled in the top of them. And so I just ran a wire through the top. Or these are actually the bottom of the post, but put them on top, and I ran the wire through those holes all the way across, and just anchored them in at each end of the trellis there. And it seems to do pretty good. I guess the main benefit of it is that you can access your main vine and prune out any leaves that get early blight. I've had a lot of problem with early blight here, so that's one of the benefits of doing that, is getting those leaves as they get blighted. I can snip them off and access them instead of being in a big clump. And another benefit is you don't have to keep up with all the cages and stuff over winter or buy new ones each year and things. It's really easy to store. It's basically however many posts you have, a little roll of wire and some rope, so it's easy to store over the winter time. The trick is when you're growing them on these strings here, you've got to keep them suckered. If you don't if the suckers get ahead of you, they'll start causing some breakage and some damage to your plants. So, and what I've done, I've just tied a little knot down at the bottom of one of the tomato plants. I don't know, you can see it, but there's a knot right there at the bottom of tomato plants. Use a slip knot so you can adjust it so it won't girdle the base of the vine. And you just, once they get about 1 foot tall, you tie that on there, and you can untie the rope from the top and just gradually wrap it around that vine as it grows. You want to do it probably a couple times a week, 3 times a week, every 2 or 3 days, depending on how fast they're growing. And once you get them going, just keep on wrapping them around, and keep it'll support the vine, so that way it's got a little bit of give to it, but it supports them pretty well. And if you keep it suckered, theoretically all the nutrients are going to go to your main vine and to your fruit. So hopefully you should get some good fruit. And they don't get near as big as a cage tomato, so you might not bear as many tomatoes, but you can do it in a lot smaller area, and you can have a lot of room for more varieties if you want to get a lot of different varieties, and you can squeeze them all in there. It seems to work pretty good. I've enjoyed it. It takes a little time to get it set up, but once it's set up, it's just maintaining it afterwards, so it works out pretty well. And also I put some straw. I'm probably going to use some compost next year and put some straw or compost down. Try to keep the water from splashing up, and that kind of helps reduce some of your chances of getting the early blight and getting infected and all. So one concern I have about straw is you might get some seed coming back from the straw and some grasses and stuff. So I might use some compost or something a little bit different next year just to see how it does. But hopefully using wheat straw shouldn't have a whole lot of seed in there, so hopefully it won't be too bad. But we learn as we go along. So but that's kind of how it works. I just tie a little knot at the top of the wire here and just adjust it as you need to. And the biggest thing, you got to keep an eye on it. If you let it go for more than about a week, you can lose the main leader. It can fall over and break because it's not supported, or you can get some suckers growing really big and breaking or taking up a lot of extra nutrients. So as long as you can just come out here and spend about 5 or 10 minutes once a week, a couple times a week, you can keep up with it real good, and it works out pretty well. Okay, well, we like to do a lot of different stuff here in the garden, just experiment and play around. Wish we had more time to read and study stuff. We just kind of go by the seat of our pants here. So some stuff works and some doesn't. We planted some onions, keep them going in the cool season. We're trying spaghetti squash for the first time this year, so hopefully the kids will enjoy eating some spaghetti sauce on spaghetti squash there. So we'll see how that turns out. Seems to be growing pretty well. We've been messing around with some asparagus. This is the second year for most of these plants. 1 or 2 plants a little bit older than that. We hadn't had a chance to really harvest it, but hopefully next year there'll be enough. They'll have a good enough root system and send up enough shoots that we'll have a pretty good crop of them. So we'll see how that goes. But we'll try to keep that in the bed since it keeps coming back year after year. So I built a little raised bed to keep them in there, keep them growing. So we'll see how that works. I kind of put some stakes and some string to keep the tops from falling down, just to keep them standing up and be a little bit healthier and look a little bit better, hopefully. Built a couple of raised beds this year or over the winter time for some strawberries. Don't know a whole lot about strawberries, but I figured we'd try it. So we bought a set of strawberries and planted. These are some new strawberries right here. The first year we just planted them back in the early spring. And the bed up there, we actually had the original strawberry bed had so many runners coming off the side of it, we just figured we'd put some pots of soil and just some cups, just took some little plastic cups from yogurt cups or whatever we could find around the house out of the recycle bin, and stuck them up there by the original strawberry bed and let the runners get established in them. And then early spring we just moved them from there and transplanted them down here into this other raised bed. So I've heard that the runners won't do as well as a new plant would, but we'll figure to give it a try. We had free runners and had time, so in the winter, so we just figured we'd see what happened, just play around with it and try to learn a few things. So had a little compost pile. I had a fencing project, so that's been taking up a lot of time. I had a bunch of old rotted posts that I wasn't going to use. They're about 6-foot posts, and the bottom 2 feet were rotted, so I just chopped off the bottom 2 feet and just laid them up there. Didn't even nail them, just laid them all together and just have a place to put all the carrot tops and some weeds and stuff like that, and just throw them in there, and hopefully it'll compost down. I know there's better ways to compost and turning and all that. Fortunately don't really have the time to keep up with it, but at least it gets it out of the garden and keeps weeds from growing there anyways, and maybe we'll get some compost out of it down the road as well. But just had some extra posts hanging around, just kind of built that up and made a little compost pile out of it. And at least that way you can tell the kids when they're pulling weeds or when they're hauling weeds, if you can get them to pull weeds. Sometimes that's kind of hard, but it's easy to tell them where to dump them, so that makes it a little bit easy too. You have a one certain spot to go to, so we've done that. And we always have a few flowers. Some of them just come up year after year, and we just kind of, kids and my wife especially like flowers, so they'll just we'll try to work around them. If they come up, they get in the way. I may yank one up and not let them know about it, but try to have a little bit of color in here every now and then when we get a chance. So.
Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed our July garden calendar, where we've looked at several different raised bed gardens. We've talked about Japanese beetles that are pests in July. We've looked at different trellising of different vegetables. We've shown you how to install drip irrigation, or what it looks like in the garden. Also, we've talked to you about deadheading perennials and some different things, and then visiting the Heath family gardens here. So I hope you've enjoyed part of our show for July, and if you have any questions, just contact us at the Cooperative Extension office, and we are at 376 First Avenue Southwest in Taylorsville, which is right behind First Baptist Church and right beside the health department. So come find us, or give us a call at 632-4451, or look us up online, alexandraextension.com.